Hello everyone, and welcome back to Learn Well podcast. Today is the fourth episode of our podcast, and I'm gonna be your host like the last week. Today we're gonna have as well an international guest, which this time comes from very far. But before to introduce him, music. Welcome back to Learn Well podcast. As mentioned before, today is the fourth episode of our podcast together. And as every episode, we have an international guest today as well. And as I mentioned again, this guest comes from very far. And we have with us Cambrian Berry from New Zealand, now living in the Netherlands. But I will not say much more about him, and I will ask him to introduce himself and tell us a bit more about himself. Cambrian, are you there?
Right. And as we discussed earlier, I will keep it to an absolute minimum of detail. Let's jump into it. My name is Cambrian. I'm from New Zealand. And I've been living in Europe sort of on and off for the last 4 years. I have a background in marine biology. I never really worked in it. I'm far more interested in people and relationships and the way the world works. And so basically ever since I graduated university, I've been seeking out jobs and working with people related to topics of the quality of life or helping people in some way. So that theme has taken me to some pretty interesting places over the last few years in Europe, namely Croatia, where we met. But it's also taken me in France and to Netherlands, where I am now. And I really have no idea where it's going to take me next. So yeah, it's a little bit of a brief history of me.
Interesting. Rolling around the world and doing work with people. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Keep it simple, and luckily there's people all around the world, so you're never at a loss for finding stuff to work on.
And I wanted to ask you about your work. Actually, what is that you do in life, and what are your experience specifically? Like a bit to go in smaller details. Like what is your focus on lately?
Okay.
What is your focus when you work with people?
Okay. So as I mentioned before, I got an ecology degree early in my life. And then through a series of different jobs, I ended up working in an area called service design. And whenever I get into a discussion about service design, my level of passion exceeds my ability to describe what it is. So I end up tripping over myself. But service design basically is the practice of understanding human behavior and understanding how people help each other through services. And so I ended up working in a workplace in New Zealand that was doing this and working on social issues, mainly such as homelessness or youth unemployment, and some really tricky problems faced by society, and how you can understand the people going through these challenges, how you design better solutions and ways of doing that. So it was a really challenging few years, and you're dealing with really complex ideas and working with really vulnerable people and trying to piece together this puzzle of how a society works and how you can help people better. And I think this was a perfect job for me to just really give me some skills to be able to help people a bit more. And so through a series of events, if we skip forward to when basically in that job, I was doing a lot of work, and we were doing a lot of work for government. And then at one point I was like, holy shit, my 20s are disappearing into work. And it was really consuming. So I was like, screw it, I'm leaving and I'm going overseas on a one-way ticket, and I'll see where that takes me. And it took me to Croatia in 2016, where I ended up working for Outward Bound, which is an education group using the outdoors as a way to help build soft skills in people. And I think this is the first time that I used my skills from service design with a small organization. And I could really see the impact it was having on helping the kids that came to this school. And I could just get a real joy from working for the first time in my life, I think. Working in the field of well-being, working in the field of personal development, working in the outdoors, which was really great. And it was just a point in my life where everything lined up, I guess. Yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question, but it's definitely what I did.
Yeah. Very, very shortly, we got to know a bit more about you. And since we actually discussed before, and we actually know each other for a while, I know that besides what you already mentioned, like working with well-being, working with personal development, and working 360 degrees, I would say, with people. You, during the last years, focused on something very specific, which, as you yourself mentioned many times, is like emotional well-being. Like, can you tell us a bit more about it, and how did you get, let's say, into it for the first time? Like, how it happened that you got deeply into this topic?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, what I described before in the service design world is one half of what I'm really passionate about. And as you mentioned just then, the other half of what I'm really passionate about is emotional well-being and how we authentically feel and express emotion. And the way that I got interested in this field, basically my childhood was very good. I had a very good childhood. I should be very grateful. At one point in time, through a series of events, basically everything that was happening inside of me came out, and I was confronted with a whole range of emotions that had remained suppressed basically for a long period in my childhood and my teenage years. And for me, it was really frightening to have to deal with emotions that were hidden for so long, such as depression, such as high levels of anxiety, such as fear, and all these other emotions that would be classified as uncomfortable, or we often try and push them away. And so this one event led to this just complete change in the way that I was experiencing the world, and took me from being very happy and open and extroverted to being very much immersed in the world of, I guess I would say suffering at the time. And blending a bit with my scientific background, I was like, holy shit, I can use myself as an experiment, and I can really start to understand and document and make sense of what's going on inside of me. And in the process, perhaps I can develop some ways of thinking that will make it easier for other people if they're also going through this. So for many years and years and years, like dealing with these emotions and figuring them out and coming to terms with them, I always wrote down and tried to draw diagrams and try and visualize and think about emotion through metaphor, and just approach it in different ways. So basically I've been doing that on a very much a side project kind of way as I've been going through life. but mainly this analysis, like this intense thinking about emotion, has just been a way of trying to process and ease the kind of experience that I was having, because it was quite intense. So now it's got to the point where I feel like I've integrated enough of my emotion and understood and welcomed and changed the way that I perceive and respond to my emotion, that I can help others. Which in the past, it's easy to want to help others when you're suffering. But the thing is, you're so drained from dealing with it yourself that it's putting extra burden on yourself. And even though I tried to do that, what really needed to happen was to look after myself first. So this whole world of emotion is super interesting for me. I feel like it's the elephant in the room when we're talking about all of these issues that are happening globally. And it's an area where I want to have more of an impact in the future. Yeah.
Wow, this whole thing, it's super deep. And,
yeah, just layered on thick.
Yeah, and what I'm actually wondering is, and did this whole experience shaped your emotions as well? Like, and yeah, you're still processing this thing. You think you got at a point, or is still something that you're learning about it and still shaping?
For sure, yes. And the way we think about life is like a journey, and the way I experience life now is more just like this present moment. And it does make sense to think about life as these moments blend into each other, and we have a past and we predict that we'll have a future. But I am constantly learning. And I can remember so many times over the years that I've had a realization, or I've felt relaxed, or I felt like I've overcome something I was struggling with. And I'm like, man, this is what normal people feel like. I'm so happy right now. And I tell everyone around me, it's like, man, I've made it. Like, I'm so relaxed now. And then things come back and things change, and it's like the tides, and it comes in and it comes out, and suddenly you make sense of something, and then all of a sudden it doesn't make sense anymore. But I guess at the point where it's like you can wake up and you're not dreading that any emotion will come up, or that any feeling you're particularly running from it in any way. For me now, I feel like I'm a bit of a masochist, where it's like I'm embracing discomfort at its core, and that it's like any uncomfortable experience that I'm in is like an opportunity for growth, which it's a weird mindset, and it's difficult to convince people that that's a way to exist. But the matching part with it is that you feel an intense level of calm that comes from your defenses dropping and a lack of fear for what's going on around you. So yeah, I'm always learning, and the point I've got to is now is that I need to just give up any idea of the future or striving to be any better than I am now, because the more you can accept who you are now, this is where life is, and this is where it has to be lived. So it's a constant movement towards the present moment is something I'm working on.
Yeah, again, it's super deep. Like, I believe this would take hours and hours to discuss about. Like, it's really fascinating for me. Like, yeah.
It's a subject that like everyone has, it relates to everyone, because we're all experiencing the same or similar things. Some people more extreme or in different ways, but yeah, for me, that's why it's interesting, and it's really deep, and it's probably not the kind of conversation you want to go straight into when you're first meeting people at a party, but for me, it's like the essence of life, like why it's interesting. So yeah.
I can agree with that. Like, and I believe it's a bit hard, like to approach persons like, hey, okay, you want to talk about emotional well-being, like that out of out of a blur.
To be honest,
Oh,
I'm doing it more and more, so it's like, yeah, fun. We have to talk about it, and everyone has to talk about it, and now is for sure the time. Yeah. Maybe not this podcast, I mean in general, globally.
yeah. Again, I agree with you with it. Like, for sure. And I believe this is one of the this last months especially would have been like a very, very big playground for it, let's say. And about playground, actually, what I wanted to ask you next is, since you also mentioned it, like that you got to the point that you feel like you are ready to let's say, pass your knowledge and the skills that you got to other people, and you actually did it already in the past, quite for quite some time now. My question would be, what are the projects that you actually have now? On which projects are you working now in this specific field of emotional well-being?
Yeah. It's really interesting that probably the peak of the impact I could have was thinking back to the time at Outward Bound and working with people face to face and being outdoors and working with communication and leadership and facing fears in a real practical way was so far the closest I've come to where I want to be. So I've already had a taste of it in the past. Those experiences help me understand more about how to approach it. At the moment, I'm running a project called All Day Awareness. It was the name of a company. I just got inspired one night. I have a way of getting inspired about ideas and then buying the web domain. I've been sitting back on my bed and being like, oh shit, what am I going to do with this now? But All Day Awareness as an idea is something that I'm not in a rush to grow into a business straight away. I want to have a foundation of understanding first that informs why I'm doing it and what I do. So at the moment, all I'm doing is, I guess, building a community of people and participating within a community on Instagram because it's the most accessible for me. And so what I was doing for a long time was just producing one little square, like there was part artwork, part just a thought that I was having about emotional acceptance. And it was a great exercise. Like diary writing is for some people, talking is for others. For me, sitting back and writing out a thought and then trying to explain it helps me move forward. And if I share it, perhaps it helps someone else who reads it as well. Because I think back to the books that I've read in the past, and several books have been very interesting for me. And certain sentences and ideas that I've read, once you've read them, you cannot unread them. And once they're in your head, they've shaped the way that your understanding is, and it shaped the way my behavior happened as well. And so one of those was a lady called Nicola Phillips. She wrote a really good book called Fear Without Loathing. And her concept was that for emotional issues and emotional struggles, you can't think your way out. It's like a dark room and you've got to feel your way out of it. And I'm really grateful for ideas like that. And I feel that if I can produce content and put it out to the world around me, perhaps someone will stumble across it at the time when they need it the most. I'm not trying to promote the page too much, but I want to try and make it aware that if people need the advice that I have, then they can choose to take it. And this year, I tried to move it forward a little bit. And so I developed a process that was part conscious breathing and focusing on being in the present moment, part stretching, because my conception of emotion is headed towards the body a lot, and part communication. And I'd lined up to do it at a gym here in the city I am in Utrecht. and we almost ran it with a group of people, but then at the last minute, the gym owner kind of freaked out that it would be too confrontational or too scary for the people that were doing it, which is completely fair enough. Not everyone's ready for this kind of exercise, but for me, it was like, that's the space I want to get back to, is working with people and putting them in situations where they can grow, basically. Yeah, sorry, it was a bit of a monologue.
No, it's super interesting. It's super interesting actually to listen. As I said before, like I would actually keep it going for hours. But yeah, we can't in this specific podcast, but let's see. Maybe we can have a second part of it.
Follow up.
Yeah. And yeah. Yeah, actually, in the description of the video, we'll leave the either the book that you mentioned and your channels as well, so people can actually access them if they are interested in it.
Yeah.
And,
nice.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you something that I don't know how. Like as you mentioned, this being in the present, living the present fully. And now I want to ask you a bit about the future. I don't know how it sounds to you at this moment. And after we talked about being in the present and focus on emotions in the present, but I see actually a big potential in what you do, and I'm very curious to hear like how do you see yourself with this work that you do on emotional well-being? How do you see yourself in the future with this?
Yeah, where it's going to go. And in many ways, I have no idea. My hopes for my life is that the more I'm able to focus on being present, the more honest I am, and the more authentic I am, and where how I want to respond to the world. My path, like a river, will find the natural course. I'm not trying to force my way into the things that don't feel natural to me. Of course, I do random stuff all over the place, like out of necessity, as well as like I have to live, and so I have to have a job somewhere. But I really try and just be honest and feel attraction towards the type of things that I feel like need help, or people that need help. And so in the future, I guess this idea is a lifelong idea for me. And I wanted to mention before that my goal, it's not to develop happiness in people. I'm not making a goal of happiness. I'm making a goal of authenticity. And so I see health as encompassing everything, and an ability to embrace all emotions and let them flow through us. And as difficult as it is, because it means feeling stuff we don't want to feel, for me, I feel like that's the best path. If you want to be happy, then you have to embrace being not happy. It's like a weird world of paradox. So in the future, if I was dreaming, I have a small bit of land in New Zealand, and if I imagine the future, it's existing here on this piece of land and helping people that need help, or people that come to me. Or I'm not going to chase people who don't feel like they need help. I want to be there for people who really feel like they need help and are willing to put in the effort to help themselves. And so if I could build a center myself, to be honest, anywhere, like if I had a center anywhere that people could come and we could develop emotional honesty and emotional acceptance together, that would be perfectly cool. And people in the city need it as much as people in the country. So in fact, people in the city probably need it more. I don't know. I think cities are secretly stressful places. Yeah, but that's basically the vision. It's like I keep pushing myself to be clearer, to have clarity, to have ideas that everyone understands, not just people who have a degree or highly into reading, but if my ideas are as simple as possible, then they'll be as acceptable to as most people as possible. And everyone needs help from time to time. So that's the strategy, a strategy of no strategy, and kind of just see what happens. But there's a core holding it all together.
Yeah, well, and I get the point, in a sense that it's connected to all of the things that you mentioned during your talk, like from your experience to your childhood when you talked about it as well. So it seems like, to me, it looks like a sort of, I would even say, complete bigger picture. Like, yeah, it's still future though. Let's see. I hope, and I wish I could be there actually at some point to see how it is.
You will be there. As long as like we're not taken back to boat travel in the future, but maybe that's a better way to travel. So I looked into it, and to get a container ship voyage to New Zealand, it's 3 months. So perhaps you could do a 3-month meditation course on a on a container ship and then crash land into New Zealand.
Yeah, might be also an option. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and okay, then yeah, well, I wanted to actually, this is a bit more directly, yeah, also directly from my side, like what kind, do you have any tips, suggestions, or simple methods, or something practical? And you also mentioned, like, you want to keep things and methods and tools that you use simple for everyone to be able to use them. Like, do you have some suggestions for anyone that wants to increase emotional well-being levels?
Yeah. And I will keep it at the very basic level, which I think is the most important. For me, simple breathing is one of the most effective ways to have a sense of calm and integrate emotions. And I know there's a hell of a lot of different techniques for well-being and fancy breathing techniques. I know that Wim Hof is very popular at the moment with people in crazy immersions in ice baths and extreme conditions and breathing things. But for me, cultivating the ability to breathe in your nose and breathe out your mouth, it sounds like the most simple activity in the world until you sit down and try and do it. And I was thinking of a metaphor. It's kind of like filling a glass with single drops. That if you looked at each breath in and each breath out as a single drop, it doesn't seem like much. But then over time, eventually you'll realize that the glass is a lot more full, and life is a lot more different if you can cultivate the discipline to practice this. And the second thing that's had the biggest, most effect on my life was making a regular habit of stretching. And the yoga is a very popular way of stretching. There's a lot of other really fancy technical ways of doing it. But the thing I realized most was that my mind was a reflection of my body, and stressful thoughts come from a stressful body. And most of us are holding chronic tension in our body through our daily lives. And it's my belief that this tension gives rise to stressful thoughts. So if you've got a mind wild with worry and fear, and I know at the moment is a time that there is a lot to worry about, if you address this fear within your body, develop some simple stretches, explore, like develop some curiosity for where you hold tension in your body. Maybe it's your shoulders, maybe it's somewhere else. I really like stretching in my legs. Not only is it extremely pleasurable to do stretching just as an activity, but over time it has this cumulative effect that it can slow your brain down and just provide a sense of calm, which I think a lot of people are looking for, is just to feel calm in their emotion, content in their emotion, and just okay being themselves, which is, hey, at the end of the day, that's for me, it's one of the things that really matters, is just being ourselves.
Yeah, this is like so simple and so powerful at the same time, which is sort of somehow unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's at least to me, it's like, okay, this is it. Is it really so powerful? And I believe actually it is. It's just a matter of giving it a try and see.
Yeah, it's you only have to look into the past to make the connections, and it's all the simple things that are just given different ways, different methods, and different techniques. But yeah, whether it's praying or meditating, they all come back for the same idea of focusing the mind on what's present now. Yeah.
Yep, indeed. Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add? This it's almost
I
time
think
to
we've
close
laid
it.
on the heaviness enough. Everyone's just enjoying their sangrias on a sunny summer afternoon. No, it's worth it. Like really, if you're if you're challenging, give yourself a chance to be honest and to look after yourself a bit. And if you need help, I've said it on the blog that I write, that it's if you need to contact me at any time, I'm totally open to have phone calls or I don't know, offer advice or even just listen to people if they need it. So yeah, I'm just here if you need me.
Okay, perfect. And we'll leave the contacts also, yeah. Like, or are those in your page too, on Instagram page?
On my Instagram page, yeah, I think I have my number on there, I think, but also on Messenger as well, or something like that. I send my cell phone number out into the world. I only have 2 months left on my visa here, so it's only going to last for a certain amount of time. But I think the best thing is to do if you wanted to get in touch with me is send me a message on the All Day Awareness Instagram page. And yeah, we can just go from there, basically.
Okay.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained in this area. I'm just a person who figured it out for themselves. But yeah, I think even just talking to someone else can help.
Yeah. I believe it can make a big difference in certain cases as well. Okay, so we will leave the contacts on the description of the video, so you can get in touch with Cambrian if you feel like you need it. And yeah, we're gonna close the 4th episode of Learn Well podcast, the episode of today. But before to close it, I want to say a really big thank you to Cambrian for being with us today and for what he said and what he offered to us. And yeah, let's see, we can arrange for in the near future second part of this discussion, this conversation. What do you say?
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me and letting me speak. It's really nice.
Yeah, so once again, thank you to Cambrian for being with us for this 4th episode of Learn Well. And just for information, I wanted to show you where New Zealand is. Yeah, so look at the description of the video for the details and the projects that our guest of today mentioned, and keep tuned for the next episode, which will be out on our channels next week.